At the beginning of the film, an alarming call comes into the police, and shortly after, all news channels report on an incident that occurred in Chicago. The driver over the radio reports multiple gunshot wounds, condition critical, prepare the resuscitation and medical team. Late at night, a police car races through the streets of Chicago to the hospital. Inside is a severely injured officer. The officer driving maneuvers between cars, trying to get his partner to the hospital as quickly as possible. He talks to him, trying to keep him conscious, but he is already losing it. Upon arrival at the hospital, doctors rush to help. The wounded officer is laid on a stretcher and taken inside. The officer who brought him explains in a flustered manner what happened. The patient is rushed to the operating room, and Paul, the hospital's best surgeon, is called. Paul quickly hands off his current case to another doctor and rushes to the operating room. While heading there, a colleague briefly explains the situation. Upon entering the room, Paul begins giving orders and prepares for surgery. Putting on gloves, he is about to start, but it's too late. The officer dies.
Not even 6 minutes.
Time of death, 12:24. He informs the police officer of his partner's death. The officer is grief-stricken and blames himself. But Paul tells him it's not his fault. The officer lost too much blood. He apologizes and moves on to another patient. The next morning, Paul has breakfast with his wife, Lucy. He complains that his watch is starting to lose time. Lucy suggests buying a new one, but Paul is too attached to this one. The conversation then shifts to their daughter and her college admission. Their daughter reads letters from colleges. "I remember, I just miss letters and envelopes," she says. At that moment, their daughter Jordan receives the long-awaited news. She has been accepted to New York University. Her parents hear her joyful scream upstairs and realize what thrilled her. Soon, Jordan comes downstairs to announce it herself.
Thank you. I got in. I got in. I'm so happy.
She promises Paul that she will come to do laundry and visit them. After that, she goes to her room to call a friend to find out if she was accepted too. When she comes out, Lucy notices that Paul doesn't look particularly happy. Later, the family goes to a football match, with Jordan cheering from the stands. Paul feels a little sad. His daughter is moving so far away to New York. Lucy reminds him that she once went to study in Texas.
Hey, that was cleats up!
He adds that Jordan will have plenty of reasons to visit home, and they can also visit her. While they talk, a man stands nearby, harshly scolding his daughter for the game. Paul makes a remark, but in response hears rudeness. Paul says calmly, "Buddy, calm down, or you'll get a heart attack."
Or what?
Paul, come on.
I would just shut the fuck up if I were you.
Paul calmly says the girls are still children and shouldn't be treated this way. The man continues to behave aggressively and even shoves Paul. To avoid escalating the conflict, Paul restrains himself, and Lucy stands between them. The man mockingly says that it's his wife who stands up for him, and he walks away. After this, the family heads to a pizzeria where Paul's brother, Frank, is waiting. They tell Jordan what happened.
Tell her.
I used to fight with my dad.
Oh.
Fighting all the time, screaming and crying in the house, and guess who was crying? Me. I lost every fight.
Frank tells Jordan that Paul was once an excellent fighter, but Paul objects. In his youth, he only fought with his father and always lost. In the end, he cries after every fight. Frank begins showing Jordan self-defense moves, but she replies that she already trains and is familiar with them. By the way, she trains on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, so watch out. Then Frank turns to Lucy and asks about her doctoral work. She replies that she's almost finished, and everyone raises a glass for her. After lunch, Paul and Frank step aside to talk. Frank asks his brother for money. Paul agrees to give him $2,000, and Frank thanks him.
It's okay.
All right, thanks, man. Paulie, thank you.
No worries.
Meanwhile, their conversation is overheard by a valet named Miguel. He notices that the family won't be home in the evening. At La Fonde at 8 o'clock on Wednesday. Before returning the car, Miguel secretly takes a photo of the address from the dashboard. In the evening, the family prepares for Paul's birthday celebration. He finds the new watch Lucy bought him as a gift and thanks her happily. At that moment, Susan calls. She informs him that his patient Terry is feeling unwell again. The daughter sadly asks, "So, no dinner at La Fonde?" Jordan says she'll tell Uncle Frank herself. She hugs her father and promises they will have the dinner soon anyway. After she leaves, Lucy says they can celebrate the next day. Paul returns to the hospital while Lucy and Jordan stop by a grocery store. Upon returning home, they notice a van parked oddly. Jordan goes upstairs to make a call while Lucy stays in the kitchen baking. But a man stands by the door, watching everything. Unaware of anything, Lucy continues baking the cake until she notices something strange. Pages of the cookbook flip as if blown by a draft. She turns. The window is open, though it had been closed before. She asks Jordan if she saw her iPad, and upon confirmation, she goes to the window and closes it. Then she notices dirty footprints on the floor. Someone is in the house. Lucy calls her daughter, but before Jordan can respond, a man jumps out of the bathroom and grabs her. Lucy grabs the phone to call the police. Seconds later, Jordan is being dragged downstairs, where 3 armed criminals appear. Lucy cries and begs them to leave them alone. They threaten her with death if she doesn't comply. The leader forces her to open the safe and hand over all valuables while the others ransack the house. She pleads to not harm her daughter, and one man coldly remarks that it all depends on her. A quarrel breaks out among the robbers. One tells his partner to stop playing with the knife and put it down. Going upstairs, Lucy says her husband has another watch and cash in the safe. The man sarcastically thanks her. Meanwhile, one of the robbers goes to the basement for a rope. Lucy can't open the safe. She tries to explain she's nervous because a gun is pointed at her. At this moment, left alone with Jordan, the man with the knife takes advantage and begins harassing her. Jordan begs the assailant to leave her alone. At that moment, the lock gives way, and Lucy starts putting valuables into the bag. Meanwhile, the one who went for the rope returns. He begins tying up Jordan, but the first bandit demands more time. Flash, we didn't come for a party. The second refuses, and an argument breaks out between them. While they argue, Jordan seizes the chance, grabs the knife, and slashes one of them across the face. In a rage, the other knocks Jordan to the floor. At this moment, Lucy returns with the third robber, and realizing her daughter is in danger, acts instantly. She throws scalding water in one's face and shouts to Jordan to run, but they can't escape. The criminals lose patience and open fire. At this time, Paul is in the operating room. Suddenly, it's announced that 2 women in critical condition are being brought to the ER. He immediately hands his patient to a colleague and rushes to help, but other doctors stop him, not letting him enter the OR. He realizes it's his family. Running to the ER, he learns that Lucy has been taken to surgery. Paul bursts into the OR, but they tell him the terrible news. They couldn't save Lucy. This truth becomes unbearable. Grief-stricken, Paul goes to say goodbye and barely withstands seeing his wife's body.
Oh, so much, baby.
Sometime later, Lucy's funeral takes place. Her father, Ben, delivers a touching speech. Paul listens, overwhelmed with grief over the loss of his wife.
How is this part of his plan?
On the way back, Ben thanks Paul for bringing her to her hometown. He says that Paul will always have a place there. Then he asks if there is any news from the police. Paul replies that 3 suspicious repairmen were seen nearby. Suddenly, Ben slams on the brakes. He notices something on the road. Anger overtakes him, and he speeds toward his property, where 2 poachers are spotted. Seeing him, they run. Ben chases after them and opens fire. They manage to escape in the distance. Paul is shocked by what he sees. Ben remains resolute. According to him, relying on the police is pointless. They always arrive only after the damage is done. Sometimes a man must act to prove his words. He shoots an injured deer left by the poachers, sparing it from suffering. After a while, Paul drives through the city, speaking on the phone with Detective Raines. Hearing that the suspects are still at large, he becomes angry and lashes out at a man who approached his car. Raines tries to calm him and promises to inform him as soon as there's news. Paul leaves while a homeless man shouts insults after him.
Any policy conclusion?
Sophie.
Later, Paul visits Jordan, who is still in a coma. Her friend Sophie sits by her bedside, reading a book. Paul enters, greets her, and asks what she's reading. She replies, "An economics textbook." Paul jokes that Jordan certainly won't wake up for that. Sophie laughs and says that at least Jordan won't fall behind in her studies. She asks if he wants her to leave, but Paul asks her to stay.
I can't sleep in our bed, so I sleep on the couch, watch TV until I pass out.
Paul begins seeing a psychotherapist. He cannot sleep. Lying in their shared bed is too difficult, and he only falls asleep on the couch. And even then, briefly, he cannot work or be at home, constantly thinking about his failure to protect his family. The therapist explains that it all happens in stages and he needs time.
Try to stay strong.
I know everything passes. Desperate for answers, Paul goes directly to the station and talks to Rains. He asks about DNA evidence, but learns that no matches were found in the database. On the wall of his office, Paul notices a board with dozens of open cases, most of which remain unsolved. Clearly the department is overloaded. Rains says these are mostly gang disputes, and the department doesn't care about them. But Paul's wife's case, according to him, is different. If they find at least one of the criminals, he will catch the rest. Paul asks if a reward can be offered for information, but Rains warns that this will only trigger a flood of false tips. We'll be swamped with fake calls, and we'll have to spend time checking each one. Paul then asks whether hiring a private detective would help. Rains explains that they are good for infidelity cases or finding missing persons, but not for murder. It would be a waste of money, and if they interfere with the police investigation, they could be accused of falsifying evidence and lose their license. One evening, leaving the subway, Paul notices two men harassing a young woman. He tries to intervene, and they turn on him.
What the f*** is your problem? You think you are?
He is brutally beaten, but thanks to this, the girl manages to escape. Returning home, battered and exhausted, Paul turns on the TV and sees a commercial for a gun store. This ad sparks an idea in his mind. The next day he goes into the store. The clerk greets him warmly and proudly shows various types of firearms. Then she explains the purchase procedure. To his disappointment, buying a gun involves a lot of paperwork, mandatory safety courses, and constant video surveillance. Paul leaves, saying he will think about it. Soon, during work at the hospital, a new patient with a gunshot wound arrives. As he is placed on the table, a pistol falls from his pocket. Paul discreetly hides it under the operating table. Later, he hides the weapon under his clothes and takes it with him. Trying to fire it for the first time, he causes a ricochet, gets scared, and realizes he is completely unprepared. Paul decides to get better. He spends all his free time watching instructional videos and practicing until his hand becomes steady and his shooting accurate. Soon Paul is called to the ICU. Jordan has a seizure, her condition worsens, and hopes for recovery diminish. Seeing his daughter strapped in for her own safety, he boils with rage. Those who harmed her are still free. This becomes a turning point. That same night, Paul grabs a gun, pulls up his hood, and heads to one of Chicago's most dangerous neighborhoods. He moves through the blocks and notices two men attempting to steal a woman's car. Paul intervenes. They open fire as they flee. Paul rolls to dodge the bullets and returns fire. A bullet hits the driver, and the car crashes. In the chaos, a shard of glass cuts Paul's hand. From a nearby building, a woman records everything on her phone. The second attacker escapes outside and shoots in panic. Paul takes cover behind another car, waits for the moment, and shoots him in the head. Approaching closer, he fires a control shot to make sure he doesn't get up. He tells the woman to run and leaves calmly. Approaching the wrecked car, he sees the driver take his last breath and die. On the way home, Paul throws the hoodie in a trash can and boards a train. At home, he treats his wound and falls asleep on the couch. But sleep is interrupted by flashbacks of what happened. Soon, detectives Rains and Jackson begin interviewing witnesses. The woman whose car was targeted thanks the unknown rescuer. Everyone gives the same description. People call him a guardian angel, but the same woman with the footage says, the shooter was cold and merciless. Reviewing the recording, the detectives notice his injured hand. It is clear he was not shot. It was recoil from the gunshots. Jackson concludes that the shooter is inexperienced. Raines asks the witness not to post the video online, but she already did a few hours ago. The video spreads online, though the shooter's face is not visible, only the silhouette in the hoodie and the wounded hand. Paul watches the footage at home and cannot believe he did this. News immediately picks up the story. The unknown vigilante is called the Reaper. Even reporters call him a hero, and ordinary people are increasingly drawn into the story. People nicknamed him the Reaper because he shot the bad guys, the carjackers. That's what witnesses say. At the hospital, Paul hides his injured hand under a bandage and keeps it in his pocket whenever police pass by. Later that day, he treats a boy with a gunshot wound. Paul's calm and caring approach reassures the child, who admits he was shot by a local drug dealer nicknamed the Ice Cream Man. Ice Cream Man? Using the medical records, Paul even finds this person's address. After finishing work, Paul takes another hoodie from the hospital laundry and heads to the same dangerous neighborhood where the boy was attacked. There he sees the Ice Cream Man strolling down the street.
We just went over there and he's just some white guy.
Let me guess, white guy with a hoodie.
Yeah, exactly.
Without hesitation, Paul raises his gun and shoots him, then quickly disappears. Locals immediately rush over and begin dismantling the vendor's cart, grabbing everything they can. Soon, police arrive. Witnesses again describe the mysterious figure in the hoodie. Jackson is confused. She tells Raines who was killed. Raines notices children playing a shooting game on the sidewalk and sees that one boy is pretending to shoot with his left hand. Remembering the first Reaper video, he suspects both incidents are connected to the same person. Paul continues to treat his wound. Meanwhile, the media explodes with new reports about the nighttime vigilante. While the authorities scold the detectives for not stopping him yet, Paul secretly watches the news at home, feeling a mix of pride and satisfaction. The media praises him. Some turn the story into a racial issue. Others see him delivering justice.
Reaper's isn't part of the problem. The Ice Cream Man, the drug dealer's part of the problem. You're going to side with the Ice Cream Man? You got a white...
At the station, the situation worsens. The management scolds the detectives again because they now fear copycats. Even after sharing all leads, Raines and Jackson lack sufficient evidence. Paul is, to put it mildly, completely inexperienced with firearms. Paul gradually starts feeling better. The therapist notices this and asks if he's found any new activities. Then they advise him to keep it up.
9:35 p.m.
A few days later, Paul operates on another gunshot victim and loses his ability to speak upon seeing Miguel, the same valet who once mocked him and stole the address. On his wrist, he wears the watch Lucy gave him for his birthday. Paul tries to remain professional, but only partially succeeds. Miguel dies on the operating table. Taking advantage of the moment, Paul climbs into the ambulance, takes Miguel's phone, and even uses his finger to unlock it. He retrieves his watch and phone, then goes to his office and starts reviewing the contents. Flipping through photos, Paul feels disgust. Among the images is a shot taken in his own car showing the home address on the dashboard. A memory flashes of the conversation with Frank. Then he notices a photo of a wine shop. Paul decides to go there, but at the exit, he runs into Frank. Frank comes to visit Paul and his niece. He suggests going out to lunch. Paul says he cannot leave. Then Frank asks if Paul needs money, and Paul gets offended, thinking his brother only sees him as a beggar. In fact, Frank came to return the $2,000 he owed and share his joy at finding a job. After saying this, he leaves despite Paul's attempts to stop him. After this, Paul takes another hoodie from the hospital laundry and heads to the same shop. Posing as Miguel's friend, he tries to gain the owner's trust, but the owner notices the hospital tag on his hoodie and quietly sends a message to someone named Fish, instructing him to come immediately.
Yeah, your crew that stole the shit out of my house.
You just described half the shit in my shop, man.
You killed my wife.
Meanwhile, the store owner reaches for a revolver, but Paul notices the movement in the mirror. He reacts instantly and throws a dart into the opponent's hand. At gunpoint, Paul forces him to drop the weapon and demands to see the stolen items. The owner reluctantly leads him to a safe in the back room. He swears he knows nothing and only receives deliveries from others. Inside, Paul finds valuables stolen from his home. But before he can act, Fish bursts into the store and opens fire. Paul manages to duck, and Fish's bullet hits the store owner directly. A shootout begins. Fish fires blindly, filling the room with bullets while Paul frantically reloads his pistol. Fish slips on a puddle of blood, and Paul grabs a guitar in the room, smashes it on him, then topples heavy furniture onto him. Fish barely dodges and retreats to the bar counter. Using the surveillance cameras, Paul waits for the right moment and shoots, hitting Fish in the leg. He collapses to the floor. Paul steps on the wounded leg and demands to know who killed Lucy. Under pressure, Fish confesses. It was a mechanic named Joe, and the address can be found in his phone. But as Paul reaches for him, Fish kicks him into a shelf. Fish gets up, holding the gun, ready to finish him off. But a bowling ball falls from the shelf onto his head. Paul takes the moment to shoot him with his own weapon. Before leaving, Paul takes the hard drives from the store's surveillance cameras but accidentally drops his ring, unnoticed. At home, he plays a tutorial video to learn how to destroy the discs using a drill. The next day, rumors about the city vigilante spread even further. The media creates a real frenzy. At the hospital, Paul discreetly takes syringes and medications, but Detectives Raines and Jackson appear. They show him a photo of Fish and the ring found at the crime scene. Believing it to be stolen, they return the ring to Paul as evidence connected to the robbery, not realizing it is the ring he left in the store himself. Breathing a sigh of relief, Paul politely thanks them, then later destroys Fish's phone to cover his tracks. Following a new lead, Paul heads to Joe's auto shop. He sneaks up while Joe works under a car and knocks him out with a wrench. Joe comes to, already tied under the car. Paul begins a brutal interrogation. He injects a substance, cuts the skin, and pours brake fluid into the wound, causing unbearable pain. Finally, Joe can't take it and gives a name, Knox. Paul coldly thanks him, pretends to let him go, and then activates the lift mechanism, causing the car to crush Joe. Meanwhile, the detectives begin to suspect something is wrong. They visit Frank's, explaining that the Reaper is deliberately killing the same criminals responsible for Lucy's death. They want to look at his hand, hoping to match it with the vigilante's wound. At the hospital, Paul sits beside Jordan, but sees alarming news. Imitators begin committing murders in the Reaper's name. Suddenly, a call comes from Knox. He orders Paul to arrive at a nightclub within half an hour.
Oh, come on, man. We gotta talk, Paul.
While Paul drives, Frank comes to his house. Hearing no answer, he enters and discovers the basement filled with weapons, ammunition, and evidence of his brother's double life. He realizes Paul is the Reaper. In the crowded nightclub, Paul messages Knox that he has arrived. Knox tells him to go to the restroom. Hearing a phone ringing in a stall, Paul breaks the door and finds only a left-behind mobile phone. It was a trap. At that moment, Knox appears from behind, using a random person as cover, and begins shooting into the crowd, mercilessly killing innocents. The club descends into chaos. Paul is injured and takes cover in a restroom stall. From there, he fires back, hitting Knox. Orienting himself, Paul shoots the electrical panel, plunging the club into darkness. In the confusion, he disappears among the panicking crowd. Soon the detectives are informed of the incident. They rush to the hospital, where one of the victims is Knox himself. Paul hides in another room and painfully treats a new wound using glue and a stapler. Knox describes the shooter in detail, and the detectives head straight for Paul's office. But when they burst in, he's already gone. Later, he returns home, where Frank awaits him. Frank, horrified, accuses his brother of going too far. Paul insists he had no choice. No one else would act. That same night, Paul receives the long-awaited call from the hospital. Jordan has regained consciousness. He rushes to his daughter, happy to hug her awake for the first time in a long while. The meeting is bittersweet. He must tell her that her mother is gone. Jordan cannot hold back her tears. "Dad, they won't tell me where Mom is." Once Jordan's condition stabilizes, Paul promises Frank he will no longer engage in vigilantism. It's all over.
Well, the good news is I'm not a suspect anymore. The bad news is I'm not a suspect anymore.
A week later, Jordan is discharged home. Detectives question her, but she remembers nothing of the night of the attack. When Paul and Jordan ride the elevator, Knox enters. For his daughter's safety, Paul pretends not to recognize him.
I'll see you around, Dr. Kersey.
Dad, who was that?
Not a clue, honey. Somebody else's patient.
Knox starts a casual conversation, but, as he leaves, throws a thinly veiled threat. They will meet again. Realizing Knox is nearby, Paul returns to the gun store and officially purchases a weapon. In the evening, as Jordan prepares for bed, Paul notices movement outside the window. "Why, Dad?" He orders his daughter to hide under the stairs and call the police. Soon, intruders break into the house. One fires at the silhouette on the bed, thinking it's Paul, but only finds a pillow dummy. Another goes toward the sound of water, but walks into an ambush. Paul shoots him with one shot. When the first intruder returns to check on his companion, Paul is already waiting and eliminates him as well, dropping the body down. Hearing a noise from the basement, Paul goes down, where Knox ambushes him. He shoots Paul in the shoulder, knocking him onto the couch. "Dad!" Jordan appears on the stairs, screaming in terror, momentarily distracting Knox. Paul presses a hidden button on the desk, and a concealed weapon slides out. With this shot, he kills Knox once and for all. When the police arrive, Paul claims all his wounds are from that night's attack, and the weapons were purchased legally.
Jordan could ID him, and you defended your family like any man would.
Thank you.
The detectives are skeptical, but accept his explanation. The case is closed, the criminals eliminated. Later, Paul drives Jordan to New York, where her new life at college begins. At the entrance, her friend waits. As Paul goes to the car, he notices a thief snatching a bag from a bellman's cart. Instinctively, he raises his hand as if aiming a gun and calls out to him.